conditional formulas, using other if function types to create our sales receipt. So our next step then is to build the sales receipt. Now there are already the fields I like to use on the tab that says sales receipt. Feel free to reorganize these in a different way that makes sense. Leave room though for these values here, the buyer name, the buyer, city, state, and so forth. So you want to leave some sort of room, and then we can have the labels off to the left. You can change the orders if you want, make this into some sort of receipt, lay it out now. Now in A1 though, I went and made a little cheat. Rather than typing Modesto Junior College again, I just hit the equal sign and then came down here and clicked on it where I had it below. But you can do something else. So go ahead and lay this part out first. So I'm on the sales receipt. Now I'm thinking I'd like to make it about 3 cells wide. So areas that I want things centered, I'm going to merge those cells. So I'm going to highlight all 3 of these, and I can either right click and choose merge in here, or on the home ribbon, merge and center. And I'll do the same thing for a few others. Like buyer number, I might make that really big. So I'm going to right click on, highlight those 2, home ribbon, merge and center. And just look through at other ones you might want to make rather large, or maybe you'll just have some information on the side. Make this a little bit wider. I'm thinking each of these down below could probably be centered. Now, the funny thing about merge and center is if I go through and try to do all of these at one time, it's telling me it's only going to keep that top one and throw everything else out. Let's do it just to see what happened. Oops. So we don't want that. So unfortunately, I have to do each one of these one at a time. And the next. And the next. Now I think I'll merge this one on the top as well. And I did that little thing with the equal sign, and I'm just going to click on Modesto Junior College. And maybe use an ampersand, put a space in there just like we were doing earlier, another ampersand. Oop, I added a space in front of that, didn't mean to. And then I'm going to grab this Agriculture Department and Young Farmers and put that in there too. Perfect, I like that. Maybe I'll wrap text on that, make it bigger. Oop, wrong one, maybe that's okay too. Wrap text on that one, make it bigger, bigger. Now notice it starts cutting off. I just have to make this taller. That's all. A little bigger. Maybe one more. Yeah, perfect. Okay. And I'll do the shading and stuff later, but I have things laid out. So let's work with the rest of our information then. Now, if you haven't taken a break in a while, this might be a good point to take a pause and take a break, because it's getting a little bit confusing at this point. We're going to go into if functions that are part of statistical functions like SUMIF and SUMIFS. There's also average if, max if, count if, and so forth. Now, if I just want to compare 2 things, like maybe I want to look down the list and find out how many each buyer bought, I can then use a SUMIF and to say count them all up if they're equal to 12 or whatever it happens to be for the buyer number. But maybe I have 2 things I want to check out. I want to see all those by buyer 13 that were just lambs. So it's 2 ifs. If it's buyer 13 and if it's a lamb, count it or sum it. So we have an if-s. It's sort of a plural ifs. Now how this looks different then is on the left is a SUMIF. And we start off slightly different. It's the same basic idea, but they're in different orders. You have to pay attention to the actual wizard as you're going through these. The SUMIF starts out with the range of where the question is. Like we're going to look at all the buyer numbers. And what's the criteria? Where you either put a criteria in there, like type it, or you go click on it wherever it is on your spreadsheet that has a criteria that we want to count. Like wherever there's a 13, we want to count all the 13s over there. Then the last thing is saying, fine, what are we trying to sum though? It doesn't have to be those buyer numbers. Maybe we're summing the final bids. So it's first the range that we're trying to search, what's the criteria we're looking for in there, and then lastly, where is the information we're trying to total? Now the if-s works a little different. It starts off then with what we're trying to total. Right from the beginning, what do you want to try to find out? Instead of being the last item. Then it's the same thing. What's the criteria range that we're looking in to find? Where is the criteria at? But notice it says criteria 1, 1. When I get done with this bottom one here, another criteria range and another criteria will pop up. And we can add a second one, third one, fourth one in. Some of the other if-s ones, there's, like I mentioned, the count if. There's the average if, max ifs. There's sum. And we're also going to use one other one. We're going to use a basic if statement again. Because down below, there's a question that says, if they are being shipped out of California, we have to charge $50 more. So we're going to use a basic if function there, which says, if the state does not equal, let's say we use greater than, less than together, means it does not equal, California, in quotation marks, then 50. If it does, 0. So we'll go through each one of these. So I'd like you to pause for a moment then, and work through the sheet on your own and try to build these out for practice. So the lot number, we're going to want to type this number here in. The idea being is I come here, I type in their buyer number when they come up to the table, and then the rest of this information populates. So for the name area, we're going to use VLOOKUPs off the buyer number there from the buyer table and bring in the information. For the number of lots 1, we can use a count if function, referencing that buyer number again, and counting up all the times that buyer number shows up. Now the lambs and swine then, it's almost the same thing, but we have to use an if-s because we want to look up that buyer number in the lots area, count up all of them from that buyer number that are equal to lambs. Then the same thing, but equal to swine. Now here's the formula, I have it down below. Notice in it when I was doing the count if-s for the criteria, you don't have to click on something all the time that has the word lamb, because mine doesn't have it here. I have pound lambs. That won't work. So what I did is I just inside of quotation marks for my criteria type the word, and that works fine as well. For the totals then, I used a sum if, looking again at the buyer number, sum up all the winning bids if the buyer number equals that 13. And it did it for all of those. And then I used the max if and the min if to come up with the highest one, the lowest one. Now go through and test all of them after you've done this. Maybe put the 13 in there and then toggle back to here to see if your numbers match these numbers. So give it a shot. Now if yours worked out, you can skip on to the next video. Otherwise, we have a couple more slides and I'm going to go through each one of them as well. Now for the customer lookup, we want to build the formula based on the customer number, the buying number, that was typed into the top area where I had the big 13M. Then we're going to reference the buyer's table, use the column number for the one that we built out that name, and then I'd like to go back afterwards and stick in that proper function again to get the name in the upper and lower case. And we'll do the same thing for the city and state, but reference those columns instead. So I'm on the sales receipt. Here's the 2. Now I'm looking at this and I'm thinking this time I might want to merge these together. I don't want to merge and center though. I think I'll merge across. Then do the same thing here. Merge across and merge across. I may change my mind later, but so now we're going to do our lookup. So I'll use the wizard for the first one. Lookup. Vertical lookup. What we're looking up is this 2 here, the buyer number. We're going to come here and input this number in. Where's the table? Well, let's go to the lots page, and we can use this one for all of them. We have the sold, bidding, but we don't have the guy's name here, so I take it back. We can't use this one at all. Let's go to the buyer's page. There we go. And there has our column we were looking for. So I'm going to highlight across. Let me use my little shortcut of Control-Shift down arrow. Now, interestingly, this time, for some reason, I didn't get the table array in. Doesn't make a difference. Now, if it bothers you, we could just come back and try again and see what happened. Maybe if I get the whole table this time. And down. Nope, still didn't, but I'm not going to worry about it. But I do want to count over. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Column index 6. Now, I could just type in table buyer. Let's try it out. Table buyers. Did I get it right? There. That was the name I gave that table earlier when we were clicked on the table and went up to table tools and over on the left and I gave it a name. That was that name. So I could type that in just like a named range and it worked as well. The neat thing, and the reason I bothered going back and doing this, is if additional buyers get added to the sheet, it only went to A70 or something. It may not catch them. So this way, by choosing the table, I ensure that I got all the information. Now, do I have the right one again? Let's double check them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Oh, I didn't get it. That is not 7. That is 6. And again, this is not a range lookup. I need the right person every time. Came up with a name. So let's go back and check that. Oh, that is right. No last name was inputted for that person. Okay. So I'm going to change this to 13 to make this easier to proof versus what we were typing earlier. There. So let's do another lookup. Now we could be a little bit of a cheat on this one. I could do what I did earlier where I highlight up here in the formula bar, Control C, copy, come down 1, right click in, Control V for Victor, and then change. This is probably about a 4. Let's see what 4 brings back. Nothing, but I don't think buyer 13 had a city, so let's put 2 in there this time. Oh, that worked. So 13 didn't have a city inputted. Okay, we'll do the same thing. I'm just going to paste it in again and change the column index to match the column. Now, if this is confusing to you, just do them over from scratch. It's not that much. Might have been even faster, as much editing as I'm doing. There. And let's change him. Change this back to 2 and see how it looks for that person. 2. That works. 13. Now let's look at the lots 1. Now for these here, we're looking for the number 1, not a total of the amount, but just how many. So to do that, for lots 1, I want to use a count if, because I'm just going to count up the number of times that guy's name shows up in the list. Then the next one, though, is, well, how many times did he show up that he bought a lamb? How many times did he show up that he bought a swine? The only thing changing between these is this word here. So we can actually do that little copy and paste thing between the two of them and just change lamb to swine. So here I am on mine. I'm going to go to lots 1. And I think I'll try to find the function. So I'm going to use the insert function. Not quite sure where to find the count if and so forth. So I'll just type it in here. Count if. Hit go. There it came up. Perfect. Okay. So select it and then hit OK. So what is the range we're trying to count? Well, let's go find it. So we're going to go to the lots page. And I could go to the sale page as well. Either one would work. And I'm going to highlight all of these. Control Shift down arrow. Okay. What is the criteria? Well, the criteria is that number right there, 13. So now I see it's counting up. This guy, he bought 43 of them. So I will say OK. Now the next one's a little bit different because that was a count function. The next ones are count if s. So I'll do the same thing. Insert function. Count if s. Let's see if that comes up. There it is. Count if s. Hit OK. So notice now we're starting off with the criteria, not with what we're trying to total. So where is the criteria range? So back to that same one. And I'm going to do the same thing again. I'm going to highlight all of the lots. What was the criteria? Well, the guy's buyer number. So right now that'll give us the exact same answer as we did last time. That's not what I'm looking for. So now I'm going to go through, well, what's our second criteria? Okay, so I click in there. I'm going back to here again. And I'm going to say, well, we already counted who it was, oops, the wrong one, to the lots page. We already counted who it was sold to. Now let's count what the species was. So I have to go back to the top, come over to species, and click on that first one, Control-Shift down arrow. Got that. And which species? Well, I'm looking for lambs this time. And again, I don't have the words lamb typed somewhere. If I did, I could just click on that. Maybe if I just had the word lamb there. But I wanted the pound sign and all to make sense. So I'm just going to type lamb. So now it's telling me there were 9. I'll hit OK. So now then I'm just going to copy this guy. I'm going to come up here, highlight this, Control-C, escape, then come down, click where it says swine, click in there, Control-V for paste, and change the word lamb to swine. Perfect. For these next 3, we're going to use functions that are a little bit of a variation on something you've used before. The average function, the maximum function, and the min function. But in this case, there's an if tossed on the end of it. Because what we're looking for is we don't want the average of all the bids. This is on their receipt, so we want to see just the average of what they've done. We also don't want the highest and lowest of all. We just want to see their highest and lowest. So we're going to try to bring all those together using these average if functions, max if, min if function. So here I am back on my sheets. So here then, I'd like to have the average if function. Now I'm not quite sure how to lay this out, so I'm going to use this insert function wizard, and I know what it's called, average if, so I'll search for that. Now we have an average if and an average if s. Now if I wanted to find out the average bid for swine for this one person, that's 2 things, this person and the species, but we're just talking overall. So we can use the simpler one, which is just the if, because it's just one criteria. So first, the range of the criteria, and these 2 mix me up, so keep an eye out, because this one is what you're trying to average. This is where we're trying to find out what they've done. So I'm going to go to the lots, and we're looking for them. So it's not going to be the bids at this point. Okay, my Control-Shift down arrow, got them all. Now the criteria is their buyer number. So the range was all those buyer numbers on the lots page. The criteria is this buyer number here. And the average range, the range I'm trying to average, so I'll go back to the lots. And I'm going to get all the winning bids. Now for this one, I probably could have used the sale page because it has who it sold to and the highest bid. So that would have worked there too. Either way. So highlight all those. I see a number here. Perfect. And I'll hit OK. And let's make that into some sort of money formula. So I think I will use, I'm going to make a decision now which way I want to go the whole way through. If you decide to go accounting, then use accounting all the way through. If you can use currency, then use currency everywhere. Okay, so I have that. Now, I mentioned about copying. Let's see what happens. If I copy and paste it down, what do we get? To B5, B4. So really in this one, there's not much to change. This might work, but it's going to be a little confusing. So let's try this instead. I'm just going to copy this part here. Just that. I'm going to right click and copy that. Hit escape. So now I have the part that's inside the bracket, so I don't have to lay these all out again. So I should be able to type. Now this is highest. So highest is going to be a maximum function, but this is an if function. Oh, there is no max if. There's only a max if s. Darn, we'll have to do it all over again from scratch. So if I used average if s on the first one, I probably could copy the range. But remember, these weren't laid out exactly the same. The s ones were sort of backwards. So that's unfortunate. So formulas, insert function. We're looking for max if, oops, I didn't hit go. It's actually max if s. Let's see if that comes up. Okay, there's max f and there's mini f. So we'll just have to do the one. We can at least copy it down to the mini one. So what is the range we're trying to copy? I'm going to go to the lots page we're going to try to find the maximum bid off of that person. So just follow those little steps here. It says the cell in which to determine the maximum value. Well, that was the winning bid here. So click there, Control Shift, down arrow, or scroll down. Criteria range, what are we trying to find? Well, this is where we got a little bit tricky. We have to focus on the second one here, the sold to, because we're trying to find the ones just for this person. So I highlight all the sold to, that's the range. The criteria is their buyer number, this thing here. So let's go through this again. We're looking for the maximum winning bid. In the sold to, we're looking to see for the numbers, 13, 12, whatever there is for the buyer numbers. And then where is the buyer number we're looking for? Right there in this B4 cell. And it came out as 3,100. So now at least I can copy this. I'm going to Control C, escape, lowest one equals MINIFS, and just paste. There. Didn't keep the formatting, but we can fix that quickly. And currency. Okay, so we have those three. Next. So what we have left here then is the total winning bid, this if statement to figure out if there's a 50 or not, and then just subtotal here, which is just going to be adding these two here together. So the only tricky one here really is this one here, the total winning bid. And that's going to be a sum function, but a sum if. So let's give that one a try. So on my spreadsheet, I'm going to hunt for the sum function. Now it's not this one because it's an if one. So let's do a search again. Sum if. And there's a sum if and a sum if s. Again, we're only summing all the sales by that one person, so we can probably use the shorter one to sum if. So again, the first one is the criteria. So that'll be the buyer numbers here. So I'm going to highlight all those buyer numbers again. Where was that number of the criteria that we're looking up? That's this 13. We're trying to find whatever it is we put there, go to that range, find all those, and total them. And here's what we're totaling. Back to here again, the winning bids. So I'm going to come back to here and Control Shift, down arrow, all the winning bids. And then check through all the pieces here. So it's checking that it looks like buyer numbers versus looking for this buyer number. In all of these ranges, the guy who has that buyer number, what's his total? 22,750. There. Now I've got this format. I think I want to use the paint here. Now remember this tool, this is a great tool, and you'll be using this later when you do the formatting, is when you lay something out the way you want it to be, and you want others to look the same, highlight what you like, click the format painter, and paint what you don't like so it looks the same. Okay, so here we have a basic if function. I'm just going to type it out. Equals if. Every function has these little parentheses in it. So the first part, and just follow along the little steps here. First part is the logical test. The logical test is saying, does that cell, I'm clicking on it, what is that, B7? Now we're curious if that's equals California, but the thing this says here is it's $50 per lot out of California. Oh, that's per lot. I messed that up before. So let's get this right. So if it does not equal California, so there's two ways. We could say if it doesn't equal California, it's $50. Or reverse the thinking. If it does equal California, $0. And then if it doesn't, 50. So you see what I'm saying? You can either do 50, 0, or 0 and 50, depending if which way you want to test it. So I'm going to use the does not, just because that's what I wrote in the PowerPoint. If it does not equal California, inside of quotation marks. Then, comma, what do I do if that's true? Well, if it's not California, then charge them $50. If it is California, charge them $0. Close the parenthesis. Problem here though, got to make sure I do it per lot out of California. So I'm going to multiply by the number of lots won up here. Enter. So you see what we did there? First it's going to go, are you from California? You are. Okay, 0. 0 times how many lots? Still 0. Are you from California? No, I'm not. Okay, $50 times how many lots? 43. $2,000. So now the last one, we have to figure out the total. And the easiest way is this plus that. You could use the sum function, but it's just two cells, so I'm just going to add them together. There.